Hey everybody, did you see Donald Trump's State of the Union address? Now think about this. He walks into a room where half the people love him and half the people hate him. And that's the toughest crowd you'll ever deal with. I'm a professional speaker. My name's Cevin Ormond. I have been doing this for over 31 years and I've spoken over 30,000 hours on the stage. I've written 6 books on leadership. I've helped hundreds of thousands of people to become better leaders. And this was masterful. It was magical what he did. And he started it by getting people on his side with his setup. Watch this.
Madam Speaker, Mr. Vice President, members of Congress, the First Lady of the United States.
As you can see, he starts out with something that everybody has to applaud, the First Lady, right? And then he goes into this cycle. And now this cycle is the important thing I want you to see, because the purpose of the cycle is to get the people that love you to love you more and the people that hate you to hate you less. And so as he moves it back and forth through this cycle, he starts out initially with some things that are relatively neutral. And I want you to see this, so watch.
Since my election, we have created 7 million new jobs, 5 million more than government experts projected during the previous administration. The unemployment rate is the lowest in over half a century. And very incredibly, the average unemployment rate under my administration is lower than any administration in the history of our country.
So after he's done doing kind of the setup and the more or less neutral things, then he goes into what I call the spank 'em, thank 'em cycle, okay? And so first he spanks them, and he gets on them pretty hard, and the ones that hate him are going to hate that part, and that's okay. It creates a psychological pressure that he'll relieve later with the thank 'em portion. Watch.
If we hadn't reversed the failed economic policies of the previous administration, the world would not now be witnessing this great economic success. The unemployment rate for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Asian Americans has reached the lowest levels in history.
Now after the first spank 'em cycle, he then goes into a more or less another neutral cycle. And that kind of relieves that psychological pressure, but it also sets up for his next thing. Watch what he does next.
Under the last administration, more than 10 million people were added to the food stamp rolls. Under my administration, 7 million Americans have come off food stamps and 10 million people have been lifted off of welfare.
So as you can see, he spanks him again. And so that's kind of this cycle. So he kind of moves in and out and hits this spank 'em cycle again. Now watch what happens this time.
This is a blue-collar boom.
So then he kind of goes neutral again. And the next thing he does is he does something that is a really powerful technique. Watch how he does this.
Opportunity zones are helping Americans like Army veteran Tony Rankins from Cincinnati, Ohio. After struggling with drug addiction, Tony lost his job, his house, and his family. He was homeless. But then Tony found a construction company that invests in opportunity zones. He is now a top tradesman, drug-free, reunited with his family, and he is here tonight. Tony, keep up the great work, Tony.
What he did was he brought in a story, a compelling story, an example. And now I don't care whether you love him or hate him. This hits you at the heart because we're all human. And it brought everybody to their feet. Now that physical motion of bringing everybody to their feet brings everybody a little bit closer to him. even the haters. And so it's a fascinating thing that he has done here. But watch what he does next.
Our roaring economy has, for the first time ever, given many former prisoners the ability to get a great job and a fresh start. This second chance at life is made possible because we passed landmark criminal justice reform into law. Everybody said that criminal justice reform couldn't be done, but I got it done, and the people in this room got it done.
As you can see, he moved from that story, which brought everybody to their feet, to a thank him cycle where he thanks them for passing certain legislation that had certain benefits. And so that brings them even closer because they got to get up and applaud themselves, right? And so consequently, that moves the audience even more. Now remember, it's always about the audience, and you're always delivering value to and for the audience. And that's what he's doing here. And it's just really, really well done. Watch what happens next.
After losing 60,000 factories under the previous two administrations, America has now gained 12,000 new factories under my administration, with thousands upon thousands of plants and factories being planned or being built.
And so he brought him back to a neutral point again. So what do you think is going to happen next? Watch and see.
Drug overdose deaths declined for the first time in nearly 30 years. Among the states hardest hit, Ohio is down 22%, Pennsylvania is down 18%, Wisconsin is down 10%, and we will not quit until we have beaten the opioid epidemic once and for all.
He brought them back to something where they all got to stand and applaud again. And again, that same process, everybody's moving toward him. And so he did that very, very well. And then the next step in the cycle.
And because Congress was so good as to fund my request, new cures for childhood cancer, and we will eradicate the AIDS epidemic in America by the end of this decade.
He went back and did another thank him again for passing some other legislation. And so watch what happens next now. After he's had a couple of things where he's brought them to their feet. Watch what happens next.
Here tonight is a special man, beloved by millions of Americans, who just received a stage 4 advanced cancer diagnosis. This is not good news, but what is good news is that he is the greatest fighter and winner that you will ever meet. Rush Limbaugh, thank you for your decades of tireless devotion to our country. And Rush, in recognition of all that you have done for our nation, the millions of people a day that you speak to and that you inspire, and all of the incredible work that you have done for charity, I am proud to announce tonight that you will be receiving our country's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I will now ask the First Lady of the United States to present you with the honor, please.
He used another story and an example. Now, in this case, he brought in somebody that half the room loves and half the room hates, Rush Limbaugh. Now, the thing about it is that even if you hate Rush Limbaugh, unless you're a total non-feeling worm, you feel bad because he's got cancer, okay, you know? And so everybody's kind of torn with this one. It's really kind of interesting, this particular example. And then he gives him this award, you know, and has it actually done on the spot. And, you know, half the room would never show up at an award ceremony for this guy, but they were for this one because they're already in the room. So it was really interesting how he did that. So watch what he does after this particular story and example.
In 2017, doctors at St. Luke's Hospital in Kansas City delivered one of the earliest premature babies ever to survive. Born at just 21 weeks and 6 days and weighing less than a pound, Ellie Schneider was a born fighter. Through the skill of her doctors and the prayers of her parents, little Ellie kept on winning the battle of life. Today, Ellie is a strong, healthy 2-year-old girl sitting with her amazing mother, Robin. In the gallery, Ellie and Robin, we are glad to have you with us tonight.
He brings in another story, an example of someone and some people that everybody has to stand and applaud for again. And so again, it's this whole cycle that you can see is going on. And this way, everybody's got to stand up for this one. And so what do you think is going to happen next? Watch and see.
Surely we must all agree that every human life is a sacred gift from God. As we support America's moms and dads, I was recently proud to sign the law providing new parents in the federal workforce paid family leave, serving as a model for the rest of the country.
So he went into another thank him cycle. Now, what I want you to see is this cycle. Go back and watch this whole State of the Union address. Love or hate Donald Trump, I don't care. What I want you to do is take a look at this whole thing and see this cycle and understand that you can use this in your own work, in your own business, in your own sphere of influence, whatever that might be, and it'll help you. Now, I also did a podcast on this. It's available on iTunes and Podbean and other places that goes into more detail about some of this stuff. So go ahead and look that up too if you're interested. But at the end of the day, this is for you. Take these lessons and learn from them. And you'll be a better leader if you do. So with that, this is Cevin Ormond, and I'll see you on the flip side.